We're staying in our metal plate underscore 002.dwg file. And what we're going to do now is jump back to the model tab. We don't need to be in the plan view layout tab anymore. And we're going to start taking a look now at how we create a dimension style for our annotation in our drawings. Now, text styles we've done, and we've placed some single line text and some multi-line text. Pretty basic what we've done, but you can see how that workflow works now, and you can now go away and, little call to action for you, experiment with that multi-line text and single line text. Now, what we're going to do now is create a dimension style in the same way we created a text style. We're going to set a bunch of preset settings so that our dimension annotation appears in the drawing the way we want it to. Now, before we do anything else, go to the layer drop down, and we're going to make sure that we're on the dimensions layer. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because you get a preview of your dimension style as you work through creating it. And then you'll see what it looks like on the dimensions layer, the current layer. Now, I can go to the annotation drop down here and select this little dimension with a paintbrush on it here. That will open up the dimension style manager. I'll just close that. Or you can go to the annotate tab, dimensions panel, little arrow there. That will also open up the dimension style manager. I'm just going to click on close there and go back to the home tab. I'm going to click on the annotation flyout, pin it open so I can get to it quickly and easily. And I'm then going to go here. I'm going to click here on dimension style. Now, it's very important that you go through all of this. It is a bit long-winded, but every time you create a dimension style, you have to go through this workflow. So you can see that we've got some default dimension styles in there. We need a new one. So I'm going to click on new. And the new style name is going to be training, like that, underscore anno, A-N-N-O, which stands for annotative. We're going to start with the default annotative style, and we're going to tick the annotative tick box there as well. We're going to use it for all dimension types. Note that you can create sub-styles for different dimension types, something to maybe investigate for you later. We're going to use it for all dimension types though. So that's our new style name. We're going to start with the annotative style, which has already been preset. We're going to make sure it's annotative, and we're going to click on continue. What will happen now is the new dimension style dialog will appear. Notice it's training anno at the top, so that's our dimension style. Now, there's a lot of stuff in here that you will need, and a lot of stuff in here that you won't need. I'm going to take you through sort of, I suppose it's Sean's ideal default dimension style. And then you can take that as a foundation and develop your dimension styles accordingly. So we've got to think about dimension lines. These are those lines that go between the arrowheads on the dimensions in the preview. I normally set all of this to by layer, so it adopts the properties of the layer it's on, which is the dimensions layer. So set all of that to by layer. Baseline spacing, I'm working in millimeters. I'm going to make that 10 millimeters so that when I create a baseline, the spacing between the dimensions is 10 millimeters. I'm not going to suppress any dimension lines. Now, extension lines are the lines that come off the geometry either side of the dimension line. So again, we'll set these to by layer. As you can see, they all start to go red. So make sure they're all set to by layer. And again, you don't need to suppress the extension lines. Now, extend beyond dimension lines is the little bit that goes past the arrowhead there on the dimension line. So I'm going to change that to 2.5 millimeters. And my offset from origin, you need that to be a reasonable size. I tend to go for 4 millimeters. Now, if I press tab on the keyboard to go to the next cell in this particular tab on the dialog box, can you see that the distance between the geometry and the extension line changes? That's at 4. We don't need fixed length extension lines. You can set them if you wish. Symbols and arrows, quite subjective, this tab. Now, at the moment, we're using closed filled arrowheads. You can see that there. They tend to be my preference, but you could use architectural ticks if you wanted to. You could use origin indicators if you wanted to. It's entirely up to you. But I'm just going to go with closed filled arrowheads purely for simplicity. Now, leaders, you might want to change that to something like a dot instead. A leader line doesn't tend to have an arrow on it. It tends to have a dot on it. And I'm going to change the arrow size to 3.5. Now, center marks, I don't tend to use these. I tend to set that to none. And then I use my center lines and my center marks that are available on the Annotate tab on the ribbon. Up to you if you want to use marks or lines, though. Again, investigate that if you want to. Dimension breaks. If you break a dimension, it puts a preset space, 3.75 millimeters. And there's an arc length dimension where you can have an arc length symbol. Just leave it preceding dimension text for now. You can have jog radiuses as well, or radii, I should say. And the jog angle can be 45 degrees. Any linear jogs that you put in will be 1.5 times text height. Again, I'm just leaving all of that as it is. I'm going up to the text tab now. Now, the text style at the moment is standard. I have got a preset text style for dimensions in this drawing. It's called DIMS Model. So if you select that, it'll put it onto the Calibri font, basically, so it matches the text style that we created earlier. Text color, again, by layer. You can have a fill color. So if I went yellow, can you see it puts a yellow fill around it? Just go for none on that for the moment. Text height, I'm going to make that 3.5. That will then match my notes text style that is also 3.5 high. You can have fractions. You can draw a frame around the text if you wish. That's entirely up to you. Text placement is vertically above the dimension line, horizontally centered along the dimension line. View direction is left to right. If you change that right to left, you'll see it kind of goes upside down, wrong way round. That's for different sort of views, side views, plan views, etc., sectional views. Make sure it's left to right for now. Make sure the offset from the dimension line is sensible. I normally go for about 1.5 millimeters there. If I tab that, can you see it starts to look more sensible? Now, also as well, you want to make sure that your text alignment is good. If you go all horizontal, they look like that. If you go aligned with dimension line, they look like that. ISO standard, any radii or diameters will have this little horizontal crank. Align with dimension line uses up less space on the drawing. Just be aware of that. It's a little bit more sort of easy to manipulate in the drawing if you go with aligned with dimension line. Now, we're going to go to fit. Now, all of this you can just leave as is. The only thing you need to check is to make sure that the annotative box is ticked there. Primary units tab in the dialog now. This is where you can override your unit settings. So the unit format in the units at the moment is 2 decimal places. It's defaulted to that. You might not want that. You might only want 1 decimal place. Decimal separator can be a period, a comma, or a space. In America, you call it a period. In the UK, we would call that a decimal place or a decimal point. So period there forms a decimal point with decimal places after it. You can round off to a certain value, 5s, 10s, or whatever. And there's various scale factors that you can mess around with. Now, what you can also do is on your linear dimensions, you can suppress any trailing zeros. Same with your angles as well. That precision there should really go up to something like 2 decimal places. And again, any trailing zeros can be suppressed. Now, you'll notice that's exactly 60 degrees. If I tick the trailing, notice the 2 zeros after the decimal place go because it's exactly 60 degrees. You can have alternate units. So at the moment, we've got metric units. I might want to display alternate units there. And the unit format, if I set it to say architectural, if you look real close, you can see you've got the metric dimension followed by, in brackets there, the imperial dimension. I'm going to turn that off. I just want metric in this drawing. And then any tolerances I might want to set. So I might have symmetrical deviation limits. So if I went to limits, I can have plus or minus 1 and all that kind of stuff. Again, tolerances, leave set to none for the moment. So when I click on OK now, you'll see that we now have training anno as a current dimension style there. Make sure you set current as well, just in case. A little bit of a fail safe there. And when I click on close, you'll notice now our current dimension style is training anno, ready to place some dimension annotation on the drawing.